Hello there, YouTube. Devin here again. Shooting a video one right after the other. This one you probably won't see till a week later though. But I got a cool new Finnish helmet for you. If you can't tell by my lovely fur Ushanka here, my nice Finnish one. I have a new Finnish helmet for you. It's been one that's been on the list to get for quite a long time because they've been very, very hard to find. I actually got the very last one Veristalika had in stock, which I'm really, really glad they found one. I'm really, really glad that I was able to get this. It did cost me quite a lot of money compared to what they were going for a few years ago when they were available, but I still got one. And that is the beautiful Finnish M60 helmet, oftentimes referred to as the M62 to collectors, so we can use that interchangeably here. But the Finns actually called it the M60 helmet. So what I got here is a beautiful, unissued condition, still has the sticker that was left on it. Actually Finnish produced M60 helmet. Now Finland would buy helmets like this, almost identical, some liner differences, from Sweden to use right away. They would be green. I have a video on one of those. If you would like to go back and see it, please take a look at my Swedish variation of this helmet. In Sweden, they would often be called the M3765 to a lot of collectors, but it's based off of the updated liner version of the M37 Swedish helmet, which is kind of this turtle-y shape. Very, very round, very, very nice. It's a super, super cool helmet. Now, it kind of has that same Portuguese thing going on with it. Whereas if you haven't seen my helmet on my Portuguese 4060 video or something like that, I forget what the designation is right off the top of my head. But this helmet has a very, very cool, unique construction. So this helmet would obviously be adopted in 1960 to replace the aging M40-55 helmets. A lot of those left over from World War II or converted World War II Stahlhelm shells with different liner updates and paint. But they would be replacing that Stahlhelm look, trying to go through the whole denazification process. They were one of the last countries to actually use the Stahlhelm as their active kind of frontline helmet for their widespread military use. Obviously the West Germans would use them along the border to not be confused with NATO troops or United Nations troops and stuff like that. Just to prevent confusion, sorry. But the Finns would continue to use the Stahlhelm well into the 60s, actually. And even in some reserve units into the 2000s, unfortunately. So you would see troops out there still wearing, very recently, with Finnish M05 camo, which stands for 2005 model camo, still wearing the M40-55 helmets, because there's still a couple of them laying around in arsenal. Finland doesn't throw anything away unless it's broke. But they wanted to get away from the Stahlhelm look because of having to deal with being an ally of Germany during World War II, and this is what they settled on. Ultimately, to replace the frontline helmet, it was very easy to get access to. Them being one of the Nordic countries and everything, right up there next to Sweden, it was very easy to get Sweden, who already sent them aid during World War II and everything, to get them to do with this, to help combat Russia, to use Finland as a buffer zone between the now Soviet Union and themselves. Finland was very happy to get these very, very cheaply and license them and purchase them pretty cheaply from Sweden. Sweden was more than happy to give them the design to give a buffer state between the Soviet Union and themselves. So difference between the Finnish ones and the Swedish ones are obviously the paint. The Finnish ones would be gray. The Swedish ones would be green. The liners would be kind of the same color. The Finnish ones have this kind of white leather. The Finns always have this kind of white-gray leather in their stuff, but the kind of lining material would stay the same. The chin strap material would stay the same. It's pretty easy to tell a Finnish one, even if it was a Swedish one that had to be repaired, because it has this kind of stone gray thread on it compared to a Swedish one. The liner is also, the plastic in it is kind of beefed up. As you see, instead of having kind of little arms that come down, it has these huge plastic brackets that come down that give the liner a little bit more strength. That's just how Finland would do it. It's a little bit better ease of maintenance as well. But that's what holds the liner in place, is these two big kind of brackets. This one, if you can tell by the date there, was made in 1972. So it's kind of a late one, actually. So unissued condition, brand new, basically. So, but Finland still actually uses those. They're still in service with reserve units. It's a very, very good helmet. Getting up close, going to be really, really hard to see on camera. It's a lot easier to see on my Portuguese helmet, but it basically starts its life out as a flat plate that they spin, and they have a set of rollers that, along a kind of template that they use to force the steel into shape. And it leaves all these little ridges that go from the crown of the helmet down to the base of the helmet, because they basically have a big mold in here, and then this is spinning, and then they have these big kind of steel rollers bend the steel helmet shell over this kind of roller, and then it would get its taper and stamped out and stuff like that and pressed into final shape. But it might be kind of hard to pick up in this one, but you can kind of see some little ridges in it there, and that's how these helmets are formed. They're done by using a big roller and just bending it around a mold, and then it gets stamped into its final shape. But the rough shape is just kind of worked into its position like that, and that allows them to have the steel be a much they're not messing with the temper on the steel as much, which is going to give you a better steel for a helmet overall as compared to like heat stamping them and stuff like that, which can give you a very mild steel, which is often a steel that will bend a lot. And so they wanted a more durable helmet, so this is going to allow you to kind of do it without needing to heat the steel up as much and mess with the temper on it. So it gives you a more durable helmet in the end. It's not really going to offer you any more protection than any other standard steel helmet, but it's going to give you a more durable helmet because the steel won't be as soft. You can have better metallurgy with it. So just kind of a neat way of how to construct it too, because a lot of helmets take a big disc and they heat it up red hot and they go ka-chunk, 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 and it goes through a bunch of different stamps over molds, and then it's trimmed down and the edge is rolled, and bam, there's your helmet. But it makes it very, very soft steel, unfortunately. So, but this is a neat way to get the best of both worlds. It does take more work and it is a little more expensive to do, but it gives you a better durability in your helmet overall. So, but we're going to flip the camera around now here. We're going to compare the Finnish m60 helmet, or m62, depending on what you want to call it. Both are technically right, but the Finns call it the m60. Collectors call it the m62. You won't see a lot of them really enter service until 1962. So makes sense there. I'm not going to argue with people about it because I've seen both. I'm just giving you an explanation for it. But we're going to see the Finnish m60 here compared to an m40-55, also which I have in unissued condition. Both of these are the same size. And I'll explain to you kind of some of the different liners and how to size them and stuff like that between both the versions, and even compared to a Swedish one, which I don't have anymore because I sold that. But you can see my Swedish helmet liner video if you would like to see that exact helmet I sold. The Swedish version of this helmet, I show the liner in that video as well. So if you want to see the difference between the Swedish one and the Finnish one, feel free to go back and look at the Swedish one. You can still get the Swedish ones for pretty cheap, and it's not wrong to use in a Finnish impression if you would like to. So, all right, let's get the camera turned around here and take a look at the liners. Alrighty, so here we go. Here we have the Finnish m40-55 on the left. On the right, we have the Finnish m60 helmet. As you can see, not a lot of stuff has changed with the color of the shells. They would both kind of have this red, you can see it on the rim here, kind of base layer, and then they would have this kind of stone gray over the top. These are both about a size 58, as you can tell by the stamp on the Finnish m40-55. Other than that, they would go from a leather liner to kind of this cotton synthetic material liner. I think it's a cotton blend, not quite sure exactly on the composition of the fabric. But it would be a much better liner material as far as breathability and everything else like that would go. It's pretty much adjustable the same way. You see this drawstring here at the top is how you would adjust the height of the crown in both of these. It's kind of white leather they would use for both of them. A lot thinner leather on the m60 as compared to the m40-55, but this would be a very familiar helmet to anybody who was issued an m40-55. It would just be kind of an update in technology. Same kind of use of the 2-point chin strap, except now you would have a breakaway kind of blackened brass buckle compared to the standard kind of roller buckle hole punch type belt arrangement you would see on most Stahlhelms throughout their life. So upgrade as far as that would go, as far as protection and preventing damage to your cranium. Other than that, you see a kind of heavy use of synthetic materials and plastics in this. You would also see the helmets would go to a raw edge rather than a rolled edge. But for the most part, it would also just be lighter. It wouldn't impede your vision or hearing as much. It would offer about the same protection rating, and it would be lighter and obviously breathe a lot better. The sizing differences between the Finnish M60 and the Swedish M3765 are different. The Finns only have two sizes. They have a small size and a large size, and they're adjustable a lot more for circumference than the Swedish ones are. They did that on purpose because they wanted obviously to streamline production. Finland's not as rich or as heavily invested militarily as a lot of other countries are. So it streamlines production. You don't have to make as much different stuff. And it gives you a lot more leeway as far as sizes go to allow you to fit a winter hat underneath this helmet. That is a big thing to consider when you're Finland. You get winter. So you want to be able to fit insulating layers underneath your helmet, obviously, to not compromise your protection. So having your liner adjust a lot more allows you to make more room for thicker winter gear. So, but other than that, you can see that's what the liners look like compared together. Not a whole lot going on. You can see this kind of plastic ring back here has these little arms that hold the liner in place. The liner is this kind of plasticky aluminum band. It's held in place with little kind of rivets that hold the sweatband in place. The sweatband is lined with kind of an open cell foam that oftentimes is fully collapsed by now. And the little rivets hold the straps in place too, the kind of herringbone straps in place. So bales are held in place with rivets that are just hammered over. The liner is held in place with rivets. So what holds the liner up and in place is the liner isn't really connected to anything. It can come out. This kind of circular liner just lifts out of the helmet. There's nothing holding it in place except for these brackets. So if you want to flex this donut piece, the liner, as you can see, just lifts away from the shell and the whole thing comes out. So there's the liner. The only thing holding it in place is you can kind of see this ring here where the liner sits that are held. The liner just sits on these four little shelf points of these brackets. So it's very easily replaceable, or you would see instances I've read about where they take their ushanka, their big fur winter hat, and they take the liner out and they just wear the ushanka in this. You can get even more insulation, but you're still getting some protection from the steel shell, but now you have room for that big fur winter hat in here because the liner just comes right out. It's not held in with anything. It's kind of like an M1 helmet in that regard. So that's a pretty neat feature, I think anyways, that a lot of people overlook on helmets like these, and it's a very, very good steel helmet like that. Also, if you don't want to get your helmet all soggy, but you need a bucket for something, here's a good bucket. You could carry water in this. It's going to be watertight. There's no air vents or anything held in it. This is a good bucket for whatever you need it to. If you needed to use it as a shovel really quickly in an emergency, bam, you have a shovel. You got whatever you need right here. Just like that. So that's a neat feature of this helmet. It's very reminiscent of Finland. Finland's pretty adamant on cool stuff like that. But that's how the liner comes out. And this is what the liner looks like totally out of the helmet. And this is how you would adjust it. You have this kind of little pin system here with these little rivets. So this liner band was made in '69. The helmet shell itself was made in '72. But it's a little snap that holds in place right here. And you can see where it is adjustable out to width, and then you would just take this tiny little baby snap and snap it right back in place. That's how you would have your ability to adjust your helmet liner right there. So, but that's the liner fully removed out of the helmet. As you can see, it's pretty neat. It's pretty easy to take out. It's just plastic. The whole thing bends quite far. It's a pretty durable, rigid plastic. You really don't have to worry about breaking it too much, but it gives you that option. So, because then you could fit your winter hat right in there and bam, you're ready to fight the Soviets again in Winter War Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. So, I'm going to take this helmet now and I'm going to put it on my head, teach her around, change the angles and everything, and we can take a look at how it would be worn and how it fits in a bunch of different angles. So, stay tuned. Alrighty, so here we are back in front of the camera again. Got my Finnish M60 helmet here. Gonna put it on, do the chin strap up how the Finns would have it. They were pretty big on actually wearing their chin straps all the way, or they would just let it dangle. You see in a lot of the pictures. Just kind of how they would so choose to do that. So it's a pretty easy helmet to put together. Locks right in place. Even weight distribution works really well. Obscures your hearing just enough because, like I said, you've seen it in my helmet videos before, I want to be able to hear out of my helmets. I don't want them to come down so far to where I can't hear, like in a lot of the Stelhelms. I want to be able to put my fingers in my ears that just, instead of being perfectly parallel, so I could touch the bottoms of my ear canals, basically, if I'm perfectly parallel, but at a slight angle, I can still get my fingers in my ears. So that's where I like my helmets to sit. They're going to protect a lot of sound from going into my ear canals and deafening me directly anyways. They're going to keep my ear canals from getting damaged by debris and stuff, but they're still going to allow me to hear the vast majority of stuff. My vision, I can see the rim of the helmet, but it's not going to impede my vision too far from left to right. Having peripheral vision is important on the battlefield. It's a very good helmet for that. It's going to obstruct just a little bit of your overhead view. Most helmets do, but not too much. It's a very good design. Very nice and rounded, very comfortable, very even weight distribution. It's pretty nice. So obviously this is what the Finnish M60 helmet looks like from the front. This is it from the left side profile. This is it from the back profile. And then obviously with the back profile, we're going to simulate the going prone test to see if it rocks forward and obstructs your vision. It does touch, this is kind of sharp. That ride just kind of sharp. But if I was wearing a uniform instead of just a t-shirt, you probably wouldn't notice. The uniform would be a little bit thicker though, the fins would wear wool. So it might push just a little bit, but it's not going to be enough to really obstruct your rifle sights all that much. So I think it gets a pass. So this is a M60 helmet from the right side profile. As you can see, it's a pretty well-designed helmet. It works pretty good. Fins worked a lot of the kinks out of it. It breathes really well. It's really stable on the head. If you want to see what the M40-55 helmet looks like, I have a video on that as well. If you want to check out some of my other Finnish helmet videos, the Finns used a smattering of helmets from basically every country in World War II or beforehand. Even a lot of World War I helmets would make their way into Finn service during World War II and would not fully be replaced until the 50s. They would continue to use a conglomeration of helmets from World War I, World War II, and everything until standardizing in 1955 on the M40 helmet. And then 1960, this would become their new frontline standard, the M60 helmet. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. You subscribe if you like this sort of thing. If you think I'm worth $1 a month on Patreon, I will leave a link to that in the description. It goes a long ways to really help. If you feel like throwing me $1, you could always pay more if you want, but I only require $1. Unlike a lot of other YouTubers, I think it's a very reasonable ask. $12 a year, and it gets you into the Discord. Discord is a thing for Patreon members only. So if that's something that's up to you, by all means. But it would go a long ways to really help. Seeing some fresh faces in the Discord would be awesome as well. Thank you all for stopping by. Hopefully I can see all of you here in the next video. Hopefully you enjoyed this sort of thing. See you in the next video. Bye-bye now.